briefly explain about the Pet Care Innovation Prize and sort of its evolution?
Sure. So the Pet Care Innovation Prize started back a few years ago. We're in our fourth cycle of it. The applications close in September. So it got started because it's funded by Purina. And Purina, like all big companies, they need to do innovation and they need to find what's innovative out there. And it's very difficult for big companies to do innovation compared to what it is for smaller companies. I mean, if you think about a smaller company, you can get the entire company together in the conference room is also their entire office, and you can say, forget it, we're not doing cats anymore, we're doing dogs. But you can just move much more quickly. The other thing is, and I always try to make sure that this is not about bashing big companies, because big companies have a ton of, they've put an enormous amount of effort into finding something that works. And then you want to get rid of all of the things that make it not work. So all of the errors and all of the things that, that all of the gray space that startups explore, because startups haven't figured out a winning formula. So a big company has found a winning formula, and now their job is to figure out how to do it ever more efficiently, because they have to, continue to do things that way. And so startups just get this latitude to try things out that big companies can't. They get to, you have things where like the founder is frequently, the chief salesperson, the chief product person, the chief HR person, and the chief webmaster, and it means that a lot of things get really, a lot of just interesting things can happen. So Purina asked us to start what we call it the PCIP, just for shorter, the Pet Care Innovation Prize, to help them build relationships with these startups. So they have an investing arm that invests in startups in the pet care space, because they know that long term they've got to have relationships with them. And those investments might be equity, or they might be, we want to do some project together or whatever. So to feed that, you have to have a lot of startups. And so to their credit, they said, we could bet on a few winners and do investments. And that would be really great. But that is hard to do, so there's a lot of due diligence. That's kind of a cautious kind of thing. A big publicly traded, especially European-based company, because they're owned by Nestle, or part of the Nestle family, that just takes a lot of effort. And so that can be slow and everything. And they said, instead of doing that, why don't we do something for much earlier stage companies? And instead of wanting equity where we have to do a lot of due diligence, let's just say we're going to give you some cash and give you some support, and we want to build a relationship with you. So that's the genesis of the Pet Care Innovation Prize. The first class was a class of 2017. So we started in 2016 that summer. Mm-hmm. Started looking for companies. We've seen several hundred pet care startups through that. They apply for it. They get, every year we pick 5 winners, and they get to come to a boot camp on the Purina campus here in St. Louis. And we introduce them to all kinds of people that are experts on the pet industry, whether they be behavioralists, or they be marketers, or legal people, or finance people, or people that can help them with finding investment. And we help them understand what's unique about the pet industry. And then we give them a small amount of cash. They get $10,000 cash. It's no equity. They don't have to give up any rights for it. All they have to do is show up for the boot camp. And now we've actually made it so that they actually then will learn at the boot camp, and then they go to Global Pet Expo, which is one of the biggest pet care trade shows in the world. And they get to go there, and they get to do a final pitch in front of some judges there in front of the industry. And one of them has made the grand prize winner, and they get a little bit of extra cash. But they all get to, we introduce them to a lot of people, so they build their network. So just kind of wrap that up. So what we've discovered is that the companies in the pet care industry are typically founded by people that are, this is a passion project. They've had another career, and they're doing something new. And they need a little bit of help understanding what's unique about the pet industry, because the pet industry has some unique challenges, but it also has some really unique opportunities. And we can support them that way, and then and do what's best for the industry, and build some relationships. And so that's what we do.
Do you yourself have a background in startups or pet industry startups, or how did you get involved with the prize?
So I am a cat person most of my life. My girlfriend is a dog person. So I do like pets. I had a startup myself. I do innovation consulting. I used to work in corporate marketing, and I got to where I really enjoyed talking to the C-suite about what the strategy was and what the opportunity was, more than I liked talking about, is the billboard going to look, these dimensions, or is the ad going to be 30 seconds or 60 seconds? And those things didn't interest me. But talking about why you were doing something was interesting. And so I started, when I left the marketing world, I started doing like TED conference kinds of things where I would bring people together and build like a little ecosystem. So I had, people exploring ideas like gamification, which is an idea where, you use games to basically make business processes simpler, because people like to play games. So you make a business process more like a game. And I would bring practitioners together along with people that were interested in that, and help people collaborate and work together. And so I just started exploring spaces. I had my own startup for a while. My former wife had a startup. She had a magazine that was for high school students.
Oh, wow.
And it was advertiser supported, and ultimately it didn't last because the advertising business model was changing really rapidly, and we were just at the wrong time for that. But she did a pretty cool thing that was all about getting people involved in writing the magazine. So all these high school students would help write the magazine and get featured in it. Then they'd get to hand out copies at their school. So I learned about how to keep people engaged. And then I had my own startup for a short period of time that was all about using blockchain technology, which is kind of a buzzword right now, for collecting data and letting people use the data to offer incentives and to incentivize, healthy behavior or good behavior change and things.
So for founders or would-be founders in the pet industry, how can they go about getting involved in the Pet Care Innovation Prize? You mentioned a formal application, but
Sure.
what's sort of the system?
Yeah, so they can just go to petcareinnovationprize.com. There's all of the information is there. It's very simple to apply. There are 2 requirements. So anybody that's a founder knows that there's this moment in time that you have where I have a great idea. Who should I tell about it? Should I keep it secret or should I make a big deal out of it? And to circumvent that is we say, don't tell us about it until you're actually in the marketplace. So that way you're already selling it. So you've already got a website. And so it's not an idea that anybody on our team is going to steal them. So we want it to be post-revenue. That also protects Purina and all of our folks from any idea that, I told you about my widget 3000 and you stole the idea, and which is really hard for people to understand. An entrepreneur can be they're really close to it, and they don't realize that probably what they're thinking about, lots of other people are thinking about. Ideas are not really as unique as we like to believe they are. And so that protects everybody by, so if you've got a company that's in the pet care industry, we don't award prizes to like individual grooming companies or individual walking companies. We're looking for things that scale up, so it can be in multiple places. So then it's an application process, and it's open to anybody. All of that information is on the PCIP website.
To have a certain amount of traction or a certain amount of sales?
We say $100,000 per year in revenue, and that number is purely a stake in the ground to say what we're really looking for is if you haven't sold at all, or if you're only selling at the Poughkeepsie Farmers Market and you don't want to go anywhere beyond that, it's probably not a great fit. We're making this. Sorry, my earbud fell out. We're making this in the kitchen, and we're only going to sell it at this booth 3 weeks a year. That's probably not a great fit. The other thing, though, is that like if you're doing anything that's technology based, $100,000 is frequently not a great number because you're trying to not actually charge anything until you get lots of users. So you're not actually collecting any revenue. So that's just a kind of a rule of thumb that we use, but we have certainly awarded to companies making way more than that, and we've awarded to companies making way less than that. Any size company is eligible to apply. The criteria that we get into then when we evaluate, and we have people go through multiple rounds of evaluation is, can our team really add any value? So if you are so far along that you really are nailing it and you're growing and everything, it's like, we really want you to succeed, but there's not actually a way that we can add a ton of value. And so we would not award a prize, because we're looking for the companies where, awarding them a prize, they get to tell the media, I won this prize and it's sponsored by Purina and it's a prestigious thing. And we have to go to this, So if you're already generating that kind of media awareness yourself, then you don't need us.
For the boot camp, is that something that takes place online, or do folks travel to you? And if they're selected for the boot camp, do they have to cover the cost of their own travel?
No, we pay for their travel costs for one founder. Now, if you want to if you have two co-founders, we'll pay for one founder, and we ask that you pay for the travel costs of the other one. There's no cost for the boot camp. The boot camp, we typically will wait to finalize the content until we know who's in the cohort, so that we know. So if there's a lot of tech companies that have a lot of data kinds of questions, or a lot of, we'll skew it that way. If they're companies that are looking to raise money of a certain type, we'll maybe have an investor at that level come in and talk to them. But so we customize the content for them. In addition to, they get to meet, CEO from Purina, and they get to spend time with really senior people in the industry, figuring out that, seeing how they work. And, and those people also want to talk to the startups, because they're all jealous of the startups, because the startups are like, man, if I want to make that decision, I have to go through 3 meetings and 12 forms, and you get to just decide.
That's funny. Do you have any success stories for folks or companies that have gone through the process?
Yeah. So one that's a cool company that I can think of, there's a lot. If you go to our website, you can see the past winners. And there's a lot of companies that on there. So we've got now, we've got 15 winners so far. Wow. One of them from the first year is a company called FetchFind. It's founded by Jamie Migdal. Jamie is a serial entrepreneur in the pet space. So she had done walking services and doggy daycare and stuff like that. And she realized that there was this opportunity to professionalize all of that stuff. So if you are, a lot of the people that might listen to this recording will be aware of this, that like if you're running a walking or grooming or boarding service or whatever, it's hard to get insurance. It's hard to figure out all kinds of things that you want to do. And what she did was she started FetchFind, which is a platform for all of the content that you need to teach all of your employees what they need to know. And so you can say, when you bring on a new walker and you need to teach them what to do about an aggressive dog, there's the aggressive dog module, and you can make sure that they actually watch the content, they answer the quiz, and they do all that. So you can have somebody that's certified for that, or certified for what to do about, different kinds of pets in different kinds of ways. Or even just like, if you're running a walking service, you have people entering other people's homes, like you have training for that. So she builds this platform that actually makes it so you can guarantee that all of the staff has all of this training. And so she's been growing, and she's working with trade associations and other people, because there's this knowledge that the pet industry is loaded with people with great intentions, but that sometimes everybody has such great intentions that allows some bad actors to be in there. And so there's everybody realizes that there needs to be some kind of, some kind of accountability and some kind of way to build, a sense of like who's legit and who's not and all of that stuff. So she's raised a lot of money. She's growing rapidly. She's building these big relationships, and that and as part of that, she then is kind of a linchpin and kind of this network of alum that we have from the Pet Care Innovation Prize. And we're actually starting something called the Pet Care Innovation Network, which is companies that have succeeded that just continue to want to get together, because the prize only offers content for 1 year. Mm-hmm. The network offers them a chance to get together and meet each other and share resources and lessons learned in a trusted environment.
It looks like you're doing a bit of a roadshow in the coming months. If someone out there maybe has a company that they would like to pitch during your meetup, do they just show up and talk to you, or how do they go about that?
Well, actually, what we encourage is we've noticed, because we've seen, like I said, about 400 different companies over the past few years, and we've noticed that they're kind of clustered in little regions.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started saying, you don't know it, but Chicago actually has a lot of pet care startups. And we'd like to do an event in Chicago and let those companies meet each other, but then also showcase what's going on so that other people see that this is a cluster, that there's an economic cluster there. So for the events that we're doing, and thanks for mentioning that, if you go to our website, you can see that we're going to be in, San Francisco, we're going to be in Baltimore, for the Mid-Atlantic region, Philadelphia on down into the Carolinas, including DC. We're going to be in Boston and Seattle. We will also be in LA. And then we do, there's actually a fairly large established group in New York called the New York Pet Tech Meetup, which is people that have technology-based pet care startups. And so we know those guys, the founders of that meetup, are also past winners of the prize. So we'll drop in and we support them. But at all of those events, what we try to do is we try to recognize the local startups. Mm-hmm. So if you go to our website, you can see we do a showcase where we say we're looking for startups that are doing something early stage here in pet care, and we'll and we bring in some expert panelists, so some investors, some corporate people, lawyers and advisors and industry experts, and we'll make sure all of those panelists talk to all of the startups. Startups get a chance to speak in front of the crowd at the room and do a little bit of an elevator pitch to get used to doing that. We videotape those sessions, and that stays up on our website. And then we leave saying, congratulations, here's what you didn't know, but there was a pet care startup in this area, or a startup cluster. So if somebody's watching this that wants to participate in that, there's a link on our website that you can just submit some information so that we know enough. There's no charge for it. Mm-hmm. And the whole goal is really to say pet care is an exciting place, but it's a little bit different. So here are some resources, and here's some peers, and here's a little bit of recognition, and we hope you succeed. And we do that rather than, we could just go, if we were just trying to market the prize, we'd go out and say, oh, free cash. Well, if you go to an event with a bunch of startups, that takes about a sentence to get that point across. And then it's like, now what else do we do? So it's like, we'd rather focus on what's interesting going on in town. So yeah, it's an awesome opportunity. We start May 22nd in San Francisco, and then we're in Baltimore, Seattle, Boston, New York at the Pet Tech Meetup, which we won't be doing a showcase there, but if you're in the New York area, we really encourage people to find New York Pet Tech Meetup. Just search that on meetup.com. Mm-hmm. They're a great group of people. There's a great community of people doing stuff in pet there. And then in LA. So
one last question I'll trouble you with. You've been exposed to 400 pet industry startups. Do you have any parting advice for either would-be founders or founders who might be currently struggling?
Oh, sure. Number one, keep it up. But know what you can really commit to, because you can't, you don't want to be in a position where you overextend yourself and you go too far. So know what have an idea of how long you can sustain it. But because we see a lot of people, there are just a ton of people that don't necessarily make it with the startup they're working on. And we'd rather you save your mental health for whatever startup is going to take care, succeed. That said, the pet industry is really exciting because on the human side, you'll see things that, like, if you wanted to do something where you looked at food and behavior and wellness and how that ties into healthcare and maybe how that ties into household activities, those are all very separate silos, very separate industries, and it would be extremely expensive to accomplish something there. Pet is an interesting space where you can still say, what can we do about how my pet eats and how it exercises and how my family interacts with it? And it can be something that a startup can actually work on. That and people love pets. I think the other thing is that to know that you're going to be selling something that the end user doesn't make a buying decision. So the pet doesn't make a buying decision. So you have to know what the pet wants, you have to know what the pet parent wants, and you have to know the channel that you're selling it through what they want. So if you're trying to sell it through vet, you're trying to sell it through big box like a PetSmart or a Petco, or independent or online, all of those things, those are called channels, and they all have different things. So as a pet care entrepreneur, you're going to need to figure out, how do I have something the pet is going to use? So, you know, you might sell it once, but if the pet hates it, you're never going to sell it again. And if the channel doesn't like it, you're never going to sell it in the first place.
Yeah.
If the pet parent doesn't get why it matters, then it's also not ever going to happen. So you have to align the interests of all those. And so there's a certain, we see actually that women and people that have a high degree of empathy tend to be, the pet industry seems to give them a little bit more opportunity than some other industries. And I don't think that's intentional on anybody's part. I mean, I think that's really great, because I know a lot of female founders that do some really amazing things. But if you can have that level of empathy of understanding what makes all of those people, all of those stakeholders happy, and you love pets, you'll probably have a better chance in the pet industry than you would have in another industry.